الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله تبارك وتعالى عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، قال سبحانه وتعالى: إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. قال سبحانه وتعالى: إلا تنصروه فقد نصره الله إذ أخرجه الذين كفروا ثاني اثنين إذ هما في الغار إذ يقول لصاحبه لا تحزن إن الله معنا فأنزل الله سكينته عليه وأيده بجنود لم تروها وجعل كلمة الذين كفروا السفلى وكلمة الله هي العليا والله عزيز حكيم. وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: لو وزن إيمان أبي بكر بإيمان أهل الأرض لرجح بهم، أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: ما دعوت أحدا إلى الإسلام إلا كانت له عنه كبوة إلا أبا بكر، أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. وقال علي رضي الله تعالى عنه: لساعة من أبي بكر خير من مؤمن آل فرعون. وقال أبو هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه: والله الذي لا إله إلا هو لولا أن أبا بكر استخلف ما عبد الله. Respected elders, my respected brothers, my little ones, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. After praising the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending salutations on Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, I begin as always by first thanking you, my host, for giving me this opportunity to convey the message of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And I pray to the Almighty Allah that Allah accepts these efforts of yours in listening to this message. As I pray to the Almighty Allah that Allah accepts these efforts of mine in trying to deliver this message of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. My young friends, the title for today: our pious predecessors, their sacrifices, their commitment, their dedication, and their love for Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Indeed, a very beautiful title, but I must confess my weakness before I even begin, that justice cannot be done to such a beautiful title in such a short time. Why? Because our pious predecessors, the ones we are indebted to for our kalima la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, the ones we are indebted to for our iman and for our Islam, they were not like the great predecessors belonging to other religions, cultures and societies, in which you have a handful of people to the most, a cut above the rest, and whose biographies, whose sacrifices, whose achievements, whose dedication and love can be summarized with ease without any difficulty whatsoever. My young friends, our pious predecessors, our Salafus Salihin, the ones that we are connected to, and the ones we are indebted to for our Iman and Islam, they were not like the great pious predecessors of other religions. Our pious predecessors and our Salafus Salihin that dedicated their lives to the deen of Allah, that made the sacrifices, that achieved outstanding goals, whether it was in the worldly sciences or whether it was in the religious sciences. And those are worthy of mention in today's lecture. My friends, they numbered hundreds and thousands in every era. Who can forget the dedication of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'een? Who can forget the commitment of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'een? Who can forget the love the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'een had for Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Who can forget their sacrifices? Every Sahabi, his sacrifice, his dedication, his love is worthy of mention in today's lecture. Who can forget the Ashri Mubashara, Abu Bakar, Umar, Usman, Ali, Talha, Zubair, Sa'ad, Sa'id? Who can forget the Ashab Badr? Those that participated in the first battle of Islam, the one that differentiated between Islam and Kufr. Who can forget the Ashab Uhud? Those that participated in the second great battle of Islam. Every Sahabi, his contribution is worthy of mention in a lecture like this. Then after the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala ajma'een came the Tabi'een, and they were no different. Every Tabi'i, his sacrifice, his love for Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his dedication and his commitment to the deen of Allah is worthy of mention in a lecture like this. After the Tabi'een came the Atba'u Tabi'een, and they followed in the footsteps of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They followed in the footsteps of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'een and the Tabi'een, and they sacrificed and they were committed and dedicated to the deen of Allah, and thus every one of them is worthy of mention in a lecture like this. My friends, who can forget the fuqaha of Islam, the great jurists of Islam, and their contribution to the deen of Allah? Who can forget the likes of Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayh, and his achievement and what he did for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Who can forget the likes of Shafi'i? Who can forget the likes of Ahmed ibn Hanbal? Who can forget the likes of the great Imam Malik, the Imam of Madinatul Munawwara? Who can forget the likes of Imam Muhammad rahmatullah alayh? Who can forget the likes of Imam Zufr rahmatullah alayh? Who can forget the likes of the great Imam Tahawi? Who can forget the likes of the great Imam Zufr rahmatullah alayh? And then came, my friend, the Muhaddithin, the masters of hadith. Who can forget the contribution of the great masters of hadith rahimahumullah ta'ala ajma'een, and how they sacrifice and how they travel to every corner of the globe, sometimes on foot, for traveling for days on end and for miles on end, just for the sake of one hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The likes of the great Imam al-Bukhari, the likes of the great Imam Muslim, the likes of Abu Dawud, the likes of Nasai, the likes of Ibn Majah, the likes of Darimi, the likes of Bayhaqi, the likes of the great Jalaluddin Suyuti rahmatullah alayh, the likes of Badruddin al-Aini rahmatullah alayh, the likes of Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahmatullah alayh. My friends, who can forget the Mufassirin of Islam, the commentators of the Quran, and how they opened the book of Allah for us and made it so easy for us to understand? The likes of the great Ibn Kathir rahmatullah alayh, the likes of the great Imam al-Qurtubi rahmatullah alayh. My friends, who can forget the Mu'arrikhin of Islam, the historians of Islam, and how they contributed to the deen of Allah, and how they sacrificed, and how they were dedicated to propagate the message and the kalima la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and how Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam lived, what Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam would do, what he would do in the battles, how he would spend his time at home with his wife. The great Ibn Hisham rahmatullah alayh, the great Muhammad ibn Ishaq rahmatullah alayh, the great Ibn Sa'd rahmatullah alayh. My friends, who can forget the Mujahideen of Islam and how they elevated the kalima la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah to every corner of the globe? Tariq bin Ziyad, Tariq bin Ziyad, Salahuddin al-Ayyubi rahmatullah alayh, Muhammad bin Qasim. My friends, who can even forget, the late Maulana Ilyas rahmatullah alayh, and how he helped to convey the message of Allah to every corner of the globe? Who can even forget the late Maulana Zakaria rahmatullah alayh, the master of hadith, and his contribution to Islam? My friends, these were our Salafus Salihin. In every era, they numbered hundreds and thousands. And every one of our Salafus Salihin, our pious predecessors, is worthy of mention in today's lecture. Thus I ask, who do we choose from amongst them and who do we leave? This is why, to make it easy for myself, I chose from amongst them that one individual whose dedication and whose love for Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and whose sacrifices and whose commitment comes second after Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I